Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and shalom to the elect, pushing the truth of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. Alright, so this is Woe to the Bloody City, Part 3, Sand Creek Massacre. Alright, the clip you just watched, it was a scene from Iron Man 3. Alright, and you know, in a nutshell, just told you what happened, you know, in a nutshell, but we're gonna break that nut basically, you know, and we're gonna show you the truth to these massacres. You know, it's an ongoing thing Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai has me doing to show you just some of the crimes of America, and why America has to pay for these crimes. You know, why the judgment is coming upon Babylon the Great, why so much blood is upon her, the filthy whore. You know, why there's a lot of blood upon her. So this is from Wikipedia, just to introduce the topic. Alright, so it says the Sand Creek Massacre, also known as the Shivington Massacre, the Battle of Sand Creek, or the Massacre of Cheyenne Indians, was an atrocity in the American Indian Wars that occurred on November 29, 1864, when a 700-man force of Colorado Territory militia attacked and destroyed a peaceful village of Cheyenne and Arapaho inhabited in southeastern Colorado territory, killing and mutilating an estimated 70 to 163 Indians, about 2/3 of whom were women and children. Okay, so it says down here, one second, I'm gonna try to make it bigger. So it says the new reserve, less than 1/13 the size of the 1851 reserve, was located in eastern Colorado between the Arkansas River and Sand Creek. Some bands of Cheyenne, including the Dog Soldiers, a militaristic band of Cheyenne and Lakota that had evolved beginning in the 1830s, were angry at the chiefs who had signed the treaty. They disavowed the treaty and refused to abide by its constraints. They continued to live and hunt in the bison-rich lands of eastern Colorado and western Kansas, becoming increasingly belligerent over the tide of white migration across their lands. Tensions were high, particularly in the Smoky Hill River country of Kansas, along which whites had opened a new trail to the gold fields. Cheyenne, who opposed the treaty, said that it had been signed by a small minority of the chiefs, without the consent or approval of the rest of the tribe, that the signatories had not understood what they signed, and that they had been bribed to sign by a large distribution of gifts. Right? That's why it tells you in the scriptures, a gift destroyed the heart. Right? It says the whites, however, claimed that the treaty was a solemn obligation, and see how these crackers act. Oh, it's a solemn obligation, but what about all the other treaties you devils signed with the Gadites? And then you promised all these things, and everything that you promised, you went back on. You turned your word back on it. Isn't that a solemn obligation? Which showing you the white man, he does not keep his word. All right, we're gonna keep pushing that to you, dumb natives. All right, the ones of you that don't know the white man is the devil, the evil one. He is the devil, man. All right, he's never gonna keep his word. He's not a man of honor. All right. It says officials took the position that Indians who refused to abide by it were hostile and planning a war. It says the beginning of the American Civil War in 1861 led to the organization of military forces in Colorado Territory. In March 1862, the Coloradans defeated the Texas Confederate Army in the Battle of Gloridia Pass in New Mexico. Right, it says following the battle, the 1st Regiment of Colorado Volunteers returned to Colorado Territory and were mounted as a home guard under the command of Colonel John Shivington. Shivington and Colorado Territorial Governor John Evans adopted a hard line against Indians whom white settlers accused of stealing livestock. And again, this is the whole situation. You have you devils, you put the natives on the reserve, which in most cases is the most desolate wasteland. You know, it's basically a wilderness that no whites want to live on. So they say, okay, the natives, what we're gonna do with them? Let's put them on that shit land. You can't grow crops. It's not fertile. You know, the rations that you bring, you have an Indian agent for each reservation, the food that comes in, he'll take the best food. He'll give you rotten meat, and this is and all these accounts you can look up, man. You know, that's why you had this something called, I believe the title of it was the Sioux Uprising. I could be wrong, but it was so-called Sioux, which are really Lakota. All right, because Sioux is a French word which basically means like a snake. It's a title. I believe it was called the Sioux Uprising, where what was it? 2 days after the Emancipation Proclamation by this devil Abraham Lincoln. 2 days after, he hung 38 chiefs or leaders of the Lakota for uprising, you know, and that was the largest mass execution in American history. And the reason they uprose is because basically the land that they were on was garbage. You couldn't grow anything, so they went and tried to hunt and this and that, and the white men interfered, and there was a battle that ensued. So they said, listen, these guys are all uprising and this and that. And no, the reason why, because you can't feed your children, man. You wake up, you see your children crying, your woman is hungry, your old ones are hungry, and you're a man in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and you're sitting there feeling like a punk. You know, what are you gonna do? You have to take care of your family, right? So that's what was going on, you know. It says, without any declaration of war, in April 1864, soldiers started attacking and destroying a number of Cheyenne camps, the largest of which included about 70 lodges, about 10% of the housing capacity of the entire Cheyenne Nation. On May 16, 1864, a force under Lieutenant George S. Ear crossed into Kansas and encountered Cheyenne in their summer buffalo hunting camp at Big Bushes near the Smoky Hill River. Cheyenne chiefs Lean Bear and Star approached the soldiers to signal their peaceful intent, but were shot down by Ear's troops. This incident touched off a war of retaliation by the Cheyenne in Kansas. And a note on this devil, John Shivington, before he became a colonel in the military, he was actually a preacher. I forget, I believe he's a Baptist or one of those, whichever one. They're all devils anyway. But he was a preacher, you know. Oh, isn't that so fitting? You know, he was a damn preacher. Then he went to the military to kill Garretts, man. So don't take none of these crackers for a fool, man. From the preacher to the Jesuit to the priest, you know, obviously to the colonel, they're all devils, man, and they will kill you. All right, don't take any of these crackers for granted, man. All right. Down here, this devil, Shivington. All right, this was the devil that led the attack on at Sand Creek. All right. So it says Black Kettle, leading chief of a band of around 800, mostly Southern Cheyenne, had led his band to Fort Leon in accordance with provisions of a peace parley held in Denver in September 1864. It says in late November, his band, joined by some Arapaho under Chief Nawat, camped along a curve of Big Sandy Creek. All right. It says less than 40 miles northwest of Fort Leon. It says the Dog soldiers who had been responsible for many of the raids on whites were not part of this encampment. Assured by promises of protection by the commander of Fort Leon, most of the warriors left to hunt buffalo, leaving only around 75 men and women and children in the village. The males were those mostly too old or too young to hunt. Black Kettle flew an American flag over his lodge as the Fort Leon commander had advised him, to show he was friendly and forestall attack by U.S. forces. So he had the American flag over, you know, peace, right? But what does the white man bring? He brings death, and you should know that. It says, meanwhile, Shivington and his 700 soldiers of the 1st Colorado Cavalry, 3rd Colorado Cavalry, and a company of the 1st Regiment New Mexico Volunteer Cavalry went to Fort Leon, all right, then set out for Black Kettle's encampment. James Beckworth, noted frontiersman, acted as a guide for Shivington. On the evening of November 28th, soldiers and militia drank heavily and celebrated their anticipated victory. It said the following morning, November 29th, Shivington ordered his troops to attack. Two officers, Captain Silas Soule and Lieutenant Joseph Kramer, commanding the 1st Colorado Cavalry Companies D and K, respectively, refused to obey Shivington's orders and told their men to hold fire. Other soldiers in Shivington's force, however, immediately attacked the village, disregarding the American flag and the white flag that was run up shortly after the soldiers commenced firing. Shivington soldiers massacred many of the inhabitants. Alright? And this is a quote down here. It says down here, this is a quote. I saw the bodies of those lying there cut all to pieces, worse mutilated than any I ever saw before. The woman cut all to pieces with knives, scalped, their brains knocked out. Children 2 or 3 months old, all ages lying there, from sucking infants up to warriors. By whom were they mutilated? By the United States troops. John S. Smith, Congressional Testimony of Mr. John S. Smith, 1865. That was a testimony. So they didn't just shoot them, they shot them, then they cut them to pieces. They scalped them, they knocked their brains out, man. Infants. You know, hey man, this white man has a lot to pay for, man. Alright? Look at this. Fingers and ears were cut off the bodies for the jewelry they carried. The body of white antelope lying solitary in the creek bed was a prime target. Besides scalping him, the soldiers cut off his nose, ears, testicles, the last for a tobacco pouch. You see that? So guess what? This happened to the black man as well. When he was lynched, they would cut your ear off, your privates, your nose, you know. They would put it in a jar as a souvenir, send it to their loved ones, saying, "Oh, look at this. We hung another nigga. You know, here's a souvenir. Here's a little, you know, what do you call it, man? An antique." They did the same thing with you natives, man, showing you are brothers. You caught the same hell by this devil, the white man. Alright, that's some foul ass shit. The man used the guy's testicles as a fucking tobacco pouch, man. That's some foul shit, man. You know? It says, this is by a quote by Kit Carson. Just to think of that dog Shivington and his dirty hounds up there at Sand Creek. His men shot down squaws and blew the brains out of little innocent children. You call such soldiers Christians, do ye? And Indian savages? What do ye suppose our Heavenly Father, who made both them and us, think of these things? I tell you what, I don't like a hostile redskin any more than you do, and when they are hostile, I fought them hard as any man, but I never yet drew a bead on a squaw or papoose, and I despise the man who would. And the papoose is a word meaning for infant. Alright? And yeah, man, even some Edomites protested, man, because it was so damn vile. You know, it was like a fucking... It's one thing to shoot someone, you know, and then you gotta mutilate them, man. It was like a scene from fucking Halloween, man. You know, Jason X or some shit. You know? But, yeah, that was it from this. Alright. Now we're gonna go further here to this book called God, Greed, and Genocide. Alright. By Arthur Grink. And we're gonna hit up page 162. It says, Little Hill's account illuminates how disease could wipe out a people forced to live under such conditions. It says, it also makes understandable Stannard's and Churchill's argument that disease was not an independent variable in the destruction of Native Americans, because that's a good point. Because it's hard to find these kind of points, because what the white man does, like these scholars, they'll say, oh, the majority of natives were killed by disease, smallpox and common cold and tuberculosis. So it wasn't mass genocide that killed them, which, number one, disease by itself, and how the white man brought it was called biowarfare. They would, in the winter time, when you're on the reservation, you couldn't hunt, right? You couldn't get buffalo hides to warm yourself, so they say, here's some blankets, and then the blankets were infested with smallpox, and they would kill you off like that. That's what the white man doesn't tell you as well. Also in residential schools, they would deliberately infect children with tuberculosis, and they would take the infected children and let them play with the with the clean children, so to speak, to infect them. That's what the white man also didn't tell you. All right, so he actually used that against him. So that's an act of genocide right there. But let's not pretend like, yeah, the white man never came guns blazing, because he did that a hell of a lot as well, man. It wasn't just disease that killed off most of natives, man. He actually came slaughtering you, and that's what these lessons are all about, man. When we did the lesson on California, right? The white man literally, there was laws that you know, if you had the money, go organize your own militia, you know, buy the guns, the ammunition. The state of California will reimburse you. Just go out and kill natives, man. You know, or the government will pay you $200 for fucking Indian scalp, man. You know, so don't try to pretend like, yeah, genocide or slaughter didn't play a big toll in that. All right. It says its role in the destruction of human life must be looked at in the overall context of white Indian relations. It says Indians who did not peacefully accept relocation were removed by force of arms. Rohn states that in areas where hostilities existed, the United States military policy was to exterminate the Indians. Although such a statement is too extreme, the evidence shows that the American military did not hesitate to massacre Indians who resisted removal from their territorial base. Chalk and Johansson consider one of the best known genocidal massacres in American history to have been the result of a conspiracy between Governor John Evans of Colorado, who sought a seat in the U.S. Senate, and Colonel John Chivington, the military commander of the District of Colorado, who aspired to a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. The conflict started when settlers in Denver and the mining camps of Colorado occupied land that government treaties with the natives had allocated to the Cheyenne and Arapahoes. Instead of removing the settlers upon whose votes those in public office depended, the government attempted to remove the Indians, and in February 1861, federal representatives persuaded a number of chiefs to accept a small reservation in southeastern Colorado. Later, upon realizing the meaning of this treaty, the chiefs renounced it. Governor Evans informed Washington in November 1863 that the Plains Indians planned to go to war against the white population in the spring of 1864. Washington thereupon authorized Evans to raise a regiment, the 3rd Colorado Cavalry, to subdue the Cheyenne, who were led by Black Kettle and other chiefs. Right? It says, acting on the pretext that the Cheyenne had stolen 175 cattle or head of cattle, Chivington led the 3rd Colorado Cavalry into the field in November 1864. He instructed his troops to use any means to kill the Indians, to kill and scalp all, little and big. When Chivington's volunteers attacked on November 29th, both American and white flags flew over the encampment of some 700 Indians at Sand Creek, which Chivington had led their chiefs to believe he would protect. No prisoners. It says Robert Brent, the son of a local trader and a Cheyenne woman, describes part of what occurred. He says, I saw 5 squaws under a bank for shelter. When the troops came up to them, they ran out and showed their persons to let the soldiers know they were squaws and begged for mercy. But the soldiers shot them all. There were some 30 or 40 squaws collected in a hole for protection. They sent out a little girl, about 6 years old, with a white flag on a stick. She had not proceeded but a few steps when she was shot and killed. All the squaws in that hole were afterwards killed, and 4 or 5 bucks outside. The squaws offered no resistance. Everyone I saw dead was scalped. I saw one squaw cut open with an unborn child, so a pregnant woman, man. As I thought, lying by her side. Captain Sod afterwards told me that that such was the fact. I saw the body of white antelope with the privates cut off, and I heard a soldier say he was going to make a tobacco pouch out of them. It says similar treatment was accorded to the Northern Cheyenne during the closing days of the American wars against the Plains Indians. It says, unable to continue the war in defense of their lands, the Cheyenne had surrendered on the condition that they would not be forced from their homeland. In the North, breaking its promise, what a surprise, the government shipped them south to Indian territory. Here on a reservation closely guarded by the military, Cheyenne family structures disintegrated. The women were prostituted by the military, and drunkenness became rampant. Finally, Dull Knife and other leaders determined to return home in the North rather than see their people corrupted and destroyed on the reservation, even if it meant fighting their way back. In September 1878, 320 Cheyenne escaped from the reservation. Soon the plains were alive with army militia units hunting down their quarry. The episode ended with most of these Indians, including women and children, being killed. So I'm gonna go back to this to another article. All right, this is 100 years New Republic. All right, posted December 1st, 2014. The country's most revealing memorial to the Sand Creek Massacre used to celebrate the killings. Alright, so after we all read everything we read, they actually had a memorial celebrating the killings. So it says, last weekend, members of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes commemorated the 150th anniversary of the Sand Creek Massacre in southeast Colorado, where hundreds of Indians were brutally murdered. But in Denver, a statue stood largely unnoticed in front of the Colorado state capitol. It, too, tells the story of the Sand Creek Massacre and also of the way modern Americans' perception of the Indian Wars has changed dramatically over the last 150 years. It says, my wife likes to tour state capitals, and we visited Colorado's Capitol building in Denver in 2006. That looks like a Civil War soldier, she said, as we gazed up at the imposing statue that stands before the steps leading up to the entrance. I insisted it must be a miner. Colorado hadn't been a state during the Civil War, and I could never remember any Civil War battles being fought in the Rocky Mountains. But upon closer inspection, my wife turned out to be right. It was a Civil War cavalryman, dismounted with rifle in hand. The plaque at the base of the statue recounted how Colorado's 1st and 3rd Cavalry during the Civil War had staged a surprise attack against Chief Black Kettle's peaceful camp of Cheyenne and Arapaho Indians on the banks of Sand Creek, in which soldiers killed more than 150 of the village's inhabitants. Most of the victims were elderly, women and children. Why, we wondered, have a statue commemorating the soldiers who perpetrated the massacre? I noticed 4 rusty holes just above the statue's base, where it looked like a plaque had been removed. The woman in charge of tours said she had never noticed the holes, but Mark, a college sophomore working at the Capitol for the summer, pulled me aside. He explained that the original plaque, which celebrated the victory at the Battle of Sand Creek, had been removed in response to Indian protests and replaced by the current plaque. It says that created a glaring contradiction between the plaque's message and the heroic image of virtuous soldiery projected by the statue. That contradiction lies at the heart of Americans' changing reaction to the Indian Wars. And that shows you, man, these devils, they celebrate your downfall, man. You know, they have a soldier up there, oh, the battle. And they named it a battle too. They name a lot, like the Wounded Knee Battle, the Sand Creek Battle. They're actually massacres, but they title it battles. Alright? So down here it says, in the mid-19th century, lured by rumors of gold and silver, settlers and speculators had flocked to the Colorado Territory. They occupied lands that the Cheyenne and Arapaho had used for hunting and began pressuring the Indian tribes to move into reservations in the arid eastern part of the state. The Indians fought back, robbing stagecoaches and stealing cattle and sometimes murdering settlers. But in the first years of the Civil War, there were no major battles between the U.S. forces and Indians. In November 1864, however, after a group of renegade Cheyenne dubbed the Dog Soldiers were accused of stealing cattle, Territorial Governor John Evans called in Colonel John Shivington, a former Methodist pastor, so that was what he was a Methodist, to mobilize his 3rd Cavalry against what the Rocky Mountain News called the Red Devils. Alright, so he called the Gaddites Red Devils, man. Alright, Shivington did not attack the camp of the Dog Soldiers, who considered themselves outside the tribal law, but the camp of Black Kettle, who had been assured protection by the U.S. military and who had raised an American flag over his camp. With most of the Cheyenne braves out hunting and with a white flag raised alongside the American as the cavalry assault began, Shivington's men encountered little resistance. According to an army interpreter who was present, the men used their knives, ripped open women, clubbed little children, knocked them in the head with their guns, beat their brains out, mutilated their bodies in every sense of the word. Afterwards, Shivington's men paraded through Denver, displaying over 100 Cheyenne scalps. Alright, so they celebrated. And to further celebrate it, they fucking made a plaque out of it, you know, with a soldier. Right? It says, when I was a boy growing up after World War II, little boys invariably played cowboys and Indians. The cowboys were the good guys, and the Indians were always the bad. Westerns were part of what C. Wright Mills called the Great American Celebration. You know, the Great American Celebration is killing natives, man, taking the land. You know, so that was it on that. I hope you brothers learned something. You know, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, and Shalom to the double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone. Shalom to the elect, pushing the truth of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. All right. Before I go, I just wanted to go read this part. I forgot that. I forgot to read this part. Let me just see here. I'm gonna just start here, right? It says, as the fighting raged, Americans portrayed it as a struggle of good against evil and civilization against savagery, and that meant denying the infamy of Sand Creek. Theodore Roosevelt, the president, the historian of the Indian Wars and the apostle of national greatness, would write in 1886 that Sand Creek was, in spite of certain most objectionable details, on the whole as righteous and beneficial a deed as ever took place on the frontier. In Colorado, Shivington had towns and street names named after him, and in 1909 Coloradans erected their own tribute to Sand Creek, the Civil War statue in front of the Capitol. You know, showing you that these crackers, they celebrate your downfall, man. So you natives, you Gaddites, you better wake the hell up, man. Your natives, your I don't know more is not gonna work. Native Lives Matter is not gonna work. Okay, they're gonna kill. They're gonna still be shooting you down in the streets, treating you like you're filth. All right, until you wake up to who the hell you are, man. Which is Yasharallah. He's a prince of God. You're a son of Jacob, man. All right. So until next time, I say shalom.